what we are going to do now is move to one of those industries that sometimes you really can't be quite sure whether it should still be placed in its original category or whether actually now it's turned into a tech industry. Now, this could be a tech industry, and I will find out whether they'd like to call themselves a tech company in a moment, but it's involved in transportation, moving goods from A to B, or indeed wherever that end user customer may be. So let's hear now how one of the global giants is transforming itself. Please welcome the CEO of Maersk, Vincent Clerc. Vincent, hello, hi.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Take a seat.
Good to be here, thank you.
And almost the same question that I asked Jim, first of all. You know this is a mobile phone show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So tell me, are you still a transportation company or are you now a tech company? Where do you see yourselves?
I think both would be the right answer. Today, you can't transport anything without having a really, really solid tech foundation to do it. We operate really large global networks at sea, at land, in the air. And what connects those networks and those assets is actually the technology that we deploy. From our customers' perspective, the most important thing, or the thing number one that they expect from us, aside from transporting their goods, is actually to provide them with visibility with what's happening with their goods on the way. And that requires, edge computing, that requires cloud, and that requires a network that is extremely powerful. So even if the logistics industry has not been one of the front runner in the digital transformation, I think this is really coming. We've invested a lot in our own capacity. It's a huge cultural change to move from thinking of yourself as a transportation company and actually thinking of yourself as a tech-powered transportation company. But it also requires that we mobilize now the ecosystem, and that's actually why I'm here today, is to start engaging with an ecosystem. The problems we have to solve are enormous. We have to do ours, but we also need to mobilize an ecosystem. There is a huge opportunity in solving these problems.
I have to say that if this was like 3 years ago, three and a half years ago, I don't imagine you and I would have been sitting here at all. Not because it's not very nice to sit and talk to you, Vincent, but 3.5 years ago, I don't think we would have been having the same conversations about supply lines, supply chains, people understanding just how complex the entire system is. It would have been supply chains, something that someone else deals with. Yeah. And then suddenly, over the last few years, you're having those conversations at board level and at customer level. People are going, supply chain problems. And it's there everywhere.
Yeah. Our world, this conference, this furniture, anything that we use, it runs on a global supply chain, which is, I think the last couple of years have shown, incredibly fragile. And we take that fragile and very important piece of infrastructure for granted. And we've seen companies that have had serious problem in maintaining the resilience of their supply chain over the last 2 years because they've taken it too much for granted. Our role and what we want to do now is to actually strengthen, build that resilience, enable it to be much more proof to the changes and the expectations that companies have. This should be something actually we don't talk about. When it goes well, it should be something we don't talk about. The reason why we're talking about it a lot is because it hasn't gone so well lately. And I think it's incumbent on us, and it's a huge opportunity for us, but also for the tech ecosystem to bring actually solutions to these weaknesses that we have seen.
Okay, well, let's talk about the challenges that you have then, because you're talking a lot about the solutions that you need. So what are the challenges? What are you faced with that you need to sort?
So I think if you start with a couple of examples of what have happened, right? Consumer behaviors are changing. Not only when there is a pandemic where they suddenly want something very different or do not have access to some of the goods that they usually have access to, but in general, consumer demands are changing. Companies need to have more agility and at the same time more resilience. So this fair weather planning of everything just, I cut a purchase order, I want it in my warehouse 3 months from now, and then I just wait and then it shows up. It doesn't happen. You don't know 3 months before what you're going to need in your warehouse. And a lot of things are happening on the way, whether it's on the manufacturing side, on the transportation side, or on your consumer side. And the ability to have both visibility, but to be able to predict also what is going on, means high reliance on cloud, high reliance on AI, high reliance on ML also to help us then devise alternative scenarios to build that resilience that there is. We operate these large pieces of assets, whether it's an ocean terminal, it's a ship, it's a network of trucks or warehouses, omnichannel DCs and so on, and all of this needs to be connected. So there's a huge issue. I think the biggest issue probably that we have to start with is disconnecting the data.
Yeah.
You live in a completely siloed data world, and we've seen that just inside our company. So we operate a terminal arm and we operate a shipping arm. And for a long time, it's been a head scratcher for us why we couldn't increase productivity in our hubs. And at some point, simply by freeing the data flow and merging the teams and having them approach the working of the terminal and of the ships as if it was one business rather than two profit centers, we've been able to improve terminal productivity by 40%.
That's a huge change.
It creates a huge amount of infrastructure, a huge amount of capacity that we didn't have before. Imagine if you can do that across the supply chain. I think it's an $8 trillion industry with a lot of waste.
So at the moment, are you not able to do that? So you're talking about your hubs and ships. Well, okay, well, let's bring in then the next stage, the lorries, the warehouses, all of that. So quite literally, because I know what you are wanting to do is not just be, the shipping industry. You are now wanting to go right from that point all the way to literally knocking on a customer's door.
Yeah. So if you start at it from the customer perspective, the supply chain is not depending on one product. It's not depending on a ship or a plane or a warehouse. It's actually the connections between all of that supply chain, from the purchase order through the manufacturing, through the supply chain, all the way up to the doorsteps of their customers. We are in the process of linking our data. The terminal example was a good example. There's many others that we're linking between our ship network, our truck network, the rails, and so on, gathering data also from our vendors, because we do operate a lot of assets ourselves, but we do also rely on a large network of vendors that provide services to us. And if you want to solve the visibility problem from the customer perspective, you can't only solve it from what you do. You need to solve it from his supply chain, which means being able to aggregate data that are not necessarily your data, that are data that some of your competitors are doing, so that you can provide back the visibility and the actionability to your customers in a neutral way.
So you are looking at the entire process, working with your customer at every sort of step. That's a lot of data.
It's a lot of data.
It is a lot of data. And you mentioned that you were using AI. Well, okay, you're using AI in a business that might have to change very, very quickly. You can't predict in this quite unpredictable world what is going to be needed. So how are you using AI and machine learning as well, you were saying?
I think machine learning for us is as important, because AI helps us actually either predict or in some cases figure out, once this is starting to unfold, what are some of the consequences that are going to have. The networks that we operate, they're so complex is that you have secondary effects and third level effects that you can never really compute in a human head. So this really helps us understand the impacts on the network. But what ML is really helping us with is actually devising solutions, alternatives, and so on. And you can test the logic, and you can keep on improving on some of the things that you can do, developing alternatives, providing alternatives to customers, being much more proactive. If you go back to your customer and say, hey, there's a ship stuck in the Suez Canal, that's nice, but that doesn't really help him. So if you're able actually to provide solutions, if you're able to provide alternatives, they may not be great, but if you're able to really be the first one and show that proactiveness, find solutions, then you have an edge. The other thing that we're using a lot is the digital twins. The investment in edge computing is huge. I mean, you talk about these hubs. You have miles of piers tens of thousands of containers. Everything needs to be orchestrated. There is no room for things. So you can actually run your operation basically by knowing the containers that are coming in, the containers that need to go out, and you can start to plan your yard, your stack, and figure out when problems are occurring, what is occurring, how do you do this, and through this modeling, you actually change the way the layout of your terminals, you gradually improve on a lot of your operation. You know, there's a lot of talk about infrastructure, physical infrastructure, you know, do we have enough ports, roads? I think actually that we have enough of that. But we don't have the technology to get the best out of it, which is really why actually, you know, for us to go through the cultural transformation that we're going into, to build the coding muscle, the capabilities that we have to do that, but also to mobilize the ecosystem is absolutely important. I think there is a tremendous value creation opportunity here on a very limited base of assets.
You mentioned the cultural transformation, and that will be an area that many people watching this will have gone through within their business, whether or not it is a mobile business or it is, again, another vertical which is going through that digital transformation. What's been the thing that you've really learned out of that? And do you, first of all, actually, let me ask you, do you think you did it well?
It's super hard to decide actually whether the pace at which you're transforming is a good pace or a bad pace. You know, you're a manager, you're a leader, you're always impatient. You would always tend to think that we should be going a little bit faster than what we're going. I think we've done a good job. We've done a good job at actually integrating new capabilities and making them count and bear for us. We're a company of 104,000 colleagues. 50% of those have less than 2 years in the company. You know, a lot of them now coming from tech backgrounds and engineering backgrounds. If you look at what it is to be a product manager in Maersk today versus what it was 10 years ago, it's a completely different profile. And the business actually evolves faster today than it ever has. So in that sense, you know, we're doing well. Are the problems solved yet? And can we say, okay, this has actually produced the sustainable competitive advantage, created the value for our customers that we would like to see created? Not yet. So it's a big transformation, and it's going to take a while still.
When you say it's going to take a while, you know, if we were sitting here in a year, would you feel that you were more there, or would you give us 5 years? Or?
No, I don't think, well, I hope not. I certainly, I mean, our plan is really that we're over 100 years old company, so there's a lot of, you know, rusty image and stuff. So it's not only on the steel that we operate, but to change the culture actually is something that we have invested a lot in the last 5 years. And as you do that, you start to have a lot of foundational work. You know, not all our applications were cloud ready. Not all of our data was connected, piped, and labeled right. So you spend the first couple of years actually getting a lot of basic stuff that is not very exciting in place. We're getting to the part now where this hard work is done, and when we can actually contemplate something that is a lot more exciting for our colleagues and a lot more exciting for our customers. So I would say another couple of years, and then we'll start to really see this punch quite strongly.
2025?
Yeah.
You're thinking, okay. You gave the most amazing statistic, which I'd not heard before, and that was the percentage of your colleagues who've been there for less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that again?
About half of them.
So half of the people working for you have actually been employed with you for less than 2 years.
Yeah.
And so very much they are going to be within the tech area, aren't they?
Not all of them, but the funny thing is, you know, we used to have a business strategy and a tech strategy that was supposed to support the business strategy. Today, the tech, you cannot even have a chapter about tech in our strategy because it's completely baked into what we're doing. So I think what has changed is not only, you know, the thousands of colleagues we have brought with engineering background or data scientists or people like that. It's also the fact that all the product managers, all the operators, they need today to have a completely different tech literacy to be able to work with tech. They need to be able to talk tech. Leadership need to be able to talk tech.
Which then strikes me, you've got a real job at the moment, finding enough people and finding the right sort of people, which, you know, just a real quick hands up in the room. Who else is having challenges with recruitment at the moment? Getting the right sort of, yeah, okay, there we go. Right, and you've got a huge influx of new people coming into the business.
Yeah. What is really interesting is actually tech people, they love a really interesting challenge. And we got really cool problems to solve. Problems that are going to make a huge difference in the world, whether it is to run the infrastructure that we operate efficiently. It's not the case today. Whether we can run also the infrastructure that we have in a sustainable manner, because there is the whole energy transition and all of that. And we've taken leadership positions in that as well. And that is something that really resonates with the crowds. And I've had a lot of interviews with senior leaders that we hired in Maersk, and they always start by saying, I would have never considered working for a company like Maersk until you actually talk with them and explain to them what we're about, where the company is in its transformation and what we're trying to do. And then you suddenly find that actually the hiring conversation is relatively easy.
You need to merge your HR and your PR departments.
Exactly.
Get more people understanding what it is that you do. Vincent, it's been really interesting to hear where Maersk is now and where it is going as well. And I look forward to hearing where you are in 2025.
Absolutely.
Vincent Clerc, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent.